In the heart of the Blue Mountain Range, located in Lebanon County, PA, stands the site of one of Lebanon's most haunted places, a lonely white church called Moonshine Church. The mystery of the story starts with a man named Joseph Raper and 6 men that took his life in seek of money. I traveled to the camp that I worked at for the past 4 years in order to talk to a local man that has connections to this story and is also a member of Moonshine Church. I used his story to help me find out how one can worship at a place that is known as the most haunted place in the entire county. This is the story of the Blue-Eyed Six.
My name is Dave Matterness. I'm the camp ranger at Bayshore Scout Reservation, which is in close proximity to the area where the story happened. Been here for 20 years and have heard a lot of stories from some of the locals, and I've read 2 books and seen a documentary about it.
So what's the basic story of the Blue-Eyed Six?
The basic story is it is actually the first case of insurance fraud in the state of Pennsylvania. It made national headlines when it happened. There was a group of men who decided to buy an insurance policy against one of their neighbors, whose last name was Raber. The idea at the time was that you could buy an insurance policy on anybody. You didn't have to be related to them. All you had to do was get a doctor to sign off and say that they were in decent health, and as long as you kept up the payments when that person died, you would get the money. So they needed some money, and it was a pretty poor area back there, and they decided Mr. Raber was kind of old and wasn't going to live too long, so they got an insurance policy on him, and then they got impatient for him to die, so they cooked up a plan to actually kill him off and then collect the money, and then they got caught. So that's basically the gist of the story.
After hearing the factual story from Mr. Matterness, I proceeded to ask him about the ghost story that surrounds the Moonshine Church and the mystery of the ghosts of the Blue-Eyed Six.
The ghost story is interesting because it happened in this area. Mr. Raber was buried at Moonshine Church, in the cemetery up there. Now, the Blue-Eyed Six, the legend that circulates around is that they were all hanged at the church, and their spirits haunt the church. And some people say if you go up there at midnight during a full moon and walk 3 times backwards around the church, you can look in and see blue eyes staring back at you through the basement windows. None of that is true at all. It's just superstitious nonsense. The original church that was there was a log church, and that burnt down in the 1960s, I think around 1962. So that structure that would have been there when the Blue-Eyed Six were around isn't even there anymore. So there is no truth to that. After the hangings, five of the 6 were hanged in Lebanon at the courthouse, which is now the market, the downtown market that's on that site. They were split up. 2 of them are buried in the Greenpoint Cemetery. 2 of them are buried in the cemetery up by Monroe Valley, or the Monroe Chapel off of 443. And there's 1 buried back in Cold Spring area. And then I'm not sure where the 6th one was, but he was not hanged because he turned evidence against his other 5 partners.
I then asked him if he thought that worshiping in a place that is thought to be the most haunted place in the entire county has an effect on how he himself or people of the congregation worship there.
The only thing that we will talk about as far as the Blue-Eyed Six, we've actually had the Historical Society come out and they held an event there at Halloween about all the ghosts in the area. The only one that we will admit to is the Holy Spirit. That's the only one that's there. So and honestly, I've been up there at night in the dark kind of staking it out because people will come up and vandalize and things during those times. And I've never felt any strange presences or seen anything unusual up there.
So the people of the church, they know what the true story is.
They know the true story, and
true story
yeah, we actually wish when the documentary came out, they had a really good factual. It was a very good factual documentary, but at the very end, in the credits, they had some local people from this area that were interviewed, and they started telling all these stories, and there was nothing there to refute it. So that kind of created an upsurge of interest in people. A lot of college kids from LVC come up here and hang out and party up there, waiting for ghost sightings and things like that.
Then, thinking of Harvard's experiential approach, I thought to ask him what might be some possible explanations for how these stories got created.
So like the whole reason that I guess people think that they're ghosts is because someone probably came out at one point, said that there was a story about it, and then people started pushing their own parts of the story, and kind of like the telephone game almost a little bit.
I think it's just kind of evolved over the years, and the little shred of truth is that Raber, the victim of the crimes, is buried there, so they associate that with, he could be haunting the place, and we don't find that to be true at all.
After listening to this story, it seems that the ghost story that surrounds this church is more of a survival story where people add their own flares to create a ghost story about the area. The thing that strikes me as the most fascinating part about this entire story is how much history surrounds just a small church in a rural area of Lebanon County, PA.